Hello. One of the video channels I watch a fair amount of is a channel called the Black Belt Barrister. And on this occasion, he was quoting a video from someone called Charles Veitch. He called him Charlie, so I assume they know each other to a certain degree. And Charles Veitch happened to be passing some building or other where he saw a group of police officers, some of who were armed, and he went up there and started videoing them. Now, he was intruding a little bit because they were in an isolated area on the forecourt of a church or some such building, and he walked up to them. There was no other civilian around. So he was a little bit obvious, but even so, it was still a public place, and you are still allowed to video in public places in Britain. So I'm going to play you a little bit of the video, but without the sound. If I can turn the sound down here. Oh, here we go. Right, yeah, there we are. I'm just going to play you some of this, and you can see, well, I'm going to tell you, this police officer is threatening Mr. Veitch by saying, if you don't get out of here, we're going to seize your camera. Doesn't he look like one of those Action Man figures with all that stuff on his chest, doesn't he? His general physical demeanour is not polite. Veitch is aware of his legal situation and has told this police officer that legally he is allowed to. The police officer isn't having any of it. He's just being extremely rude and basically saying, bugger off or I'm going to steal your camera. Okay, so that's what's happening. The Black Belt Barrister does go through various reasons for seizing a camera. One of them would be if you're not allowed to photo there for some reason, or there is a situation where the police can ask you for the video, the record in your camera, because they might need it for evidence. But in fact, in that situation, the police might have found him intrusive, but he was by no means breaking any law by the looks of things. So why was the officer acting in this way? He was just being a bully. He had a gun and he thought he was, he thought he was God. And he could order people around. Now, the problem with our police in that situation is that they are actually, legally, they are civilians in uniform. They are not above the law in the way that some police forces might be. And so he was acting like a civilian who was being a regular tosser. Now, one possible reason for him acting in this way is because he is just a regular tosser. But there is another possibility, and I'm going to be reading that to you now because it's an article I found in the Telegraph and it seemed to fit in rather well with that video from the Black Belt Barrister and Charles Veitch. And the comment is this: I left the police because I wasn't allowed to fight actual crime. Now, you see, the problem is when you have a situation where a reasonably committed person is not allowed to do things, you get frustration. Or you get the sort of people who don't mind not doing things just so long as it makes them feel important while they're not doing it. So, back to that police officer could have been the second sort, or he could have been the first sort, just feeling particularly powerless and bad about something. Like many before me, I became a police officer to fight crime. I wanted to catch criminals and lock them up. I wanted to make my local neighbourhood safer. Nothing felt better than putting away burglars, fishing knives out of waistbands, and knowing that in doing so, I was making our streets safer. When I started in the Metropolitan Police as a volunteer police officer, I had hoped to find a force dedicated to finding crime. Yet the recruitment process was more of a half-baked attempt to identify bigots than any sort of test for crime fighting aptitude. So I'm assuming that he had to answer questions about, do you Do you feel bad about certain ethnic groups, or do you not like, or have you had a bad experience with? I'm just speculating there. As I progressed, becoming a regular officer, I witnessed an organisation in which too many senior leaders were more interested in reputation management than in protecting the public. Well, you know, that sort of thing happens in any big organisation. But yes, there should be a lot more effort put into stopping that from happening somewhere in an organisation like the police. The forces systems were archaic, geared towards consuming officer time and slowing things down. And too often we were required to deal with overspills from other agencies, particularly around mental health. I understand that, but that's a common problem with police, because you get people who are not hospitalised, and yet they're causing the sort of trouble that the ordinary people would just ring the police to deal with. I did mention to you once, this was in the pre-mobile phone days, or at least my pre-mobile phone days, there was a man walking through the town centre with his trousers open and his underwear open, and I went into a local shop and I rang the police and I said, there's a man there, you know, exposing himself, and I got the police operator saying, can you describe him? And I shouted into the phone, he's got his willy out, how much more do you need? Anyway, sorry, I've still got the remains of the cold I got from my granddaughter last week. So the, you know, and there was definitely, that man was not a criminal, he was mentally ill, but the police still had to come and deal with him. So yeah, there's this grey area here, isn't there? Okay, you need to have a high tolerance for low-level crime, was the staggering invocation from one now disgraced senior officer. You see, that's the problem, and that's where the problem starts, of course. You can't have a low-level tolerance for low-level crime. Because it starts with low-level crime. That guy exposing himself wasn't actually doing anyone any harm. I mean, not physically, he wasn't physically attacking anyone. But I had seen that man before on other occasions when he had his trousers unzipped, but his underpants were still in the right order. So obviously he was just stepping from one infraction to the next. And he would have gone on to worse if he'd been allowed to. I don't know what happened to him. And I'm interrupting myself to tell you that I'm Granniopteryx on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I'm also on Twitter and Gab, where I let you know when I've uploaded a video. All the links are in the description. Also the links to where you can donate to this channel if you want. But the best thing you can do right now is click that like button and share the video and subscribe. Right, back to the police. These experiences, coupled with my own series of close calls and near misses, led me to the conclusion that if I'd continued fighting crime, I'd have ended up in the ground or intensive care. I wasn't the first or the last crime-fighting police officer to arrive at such a bleak conclusion. The need for policing to rediscover its purpose is evident from charge rates for some serious crimes that have fallen from healthy double digits to low single digits. Do you think the crime has fallen? No, it's just that a lot of police have just given up, and that armed policeman might be one of them. He just doesn't want, you know, he wants to serve his time and then get his police pension and then get out of there because he hates the job. Again, speculation. I didn't interview him. It's also obvious from public attitudes, with recent polling finding that 7 in 10 Britons think the police have given up on solving crimes like burglary and shop theft. And so they have. We had a burglary at our place, and the police came round, they interviewed us, and then they didn't do anything. You know, they really weren't that interested. Oh, it happens all the time. This is the big city, you know, that sort of stuff. Today's launch of the Public Safety Foundation, I don't know when this article is dated, just a minute. Oh, 26th of April, fairly recently then, featuring a speech from the Home Secretary on policing and crime, marks an important first step. This new foundation will speak up for a public frustrated by the lack of crime fighting. You know, there was another thing. I saw a video, which I wouldn't be able to find it now, and it showed a swarthy man, obviously an immigrant of some sort, if not an illegal migrant, but somebody from a completely different culture from the one we have here in Britain, and he was harassing women. He was running after all sorts of different women in a shopping centre. When the civilians stopped him, there were no police around, of course. When the civilian, he said, "Oh, it was just a joke. It was just a joke," and he went on. Now, if those civilians had called the police, then they would have probably got the response, "Did he touch anybody?" No. Well, then that's all right then. But that man, having got away with that, will go on to do other things. Now, these civilians chased him away, but that won't stop him. Of course, he'll just find somewhere else to go, and that's the problem. People pay for the police. They expect the police to protect them, and the police are more concerned about hurty words on Twitter. That's the general perception. Hurty words on Twitter. Or, I might say, you often get police officers accompanying people coming round to houses to check on whether you have a television licence. The police actually have no jurisdiction there, but these bailiffs who come round, because that's what they are, they often ask the police to help them on the grounds that they could get physical violence, so they want the protection. So instead of out there patrolling the streets, the police officer is standing next to somebody who's harassing some poor woman who might or might not have a television licence. It's all skewed. There's something very wrong with the way the police are behaving. But again, I'm going back to this armed police officer. He is behaving badly. And the question I am asking, is he behaving badly because he's a tosser and would behave badly in any job he was given? Or is he behaving badly because that's the culture of the police, a culture of don't care, a culture of us versus them, a culture of well, you know, we can't be bothered with those guys because they aren't ours. They aren't our tribe. And it's a bad situation, because the way people should look at the police is the only way the police are going to solve crimes. In most cases, the police need the average citizen to tell them. I did once mention this. I refused to give any sort of a witness statement to the police in a situation I saw, a nasty fight in the street, because I had had a bad experience myself with the police, and I didn't want to have anything to do with them. I wasn't even sure that they wouldn't try and implicate me in some way. And you know, there's me, solid middle-class housewife. These are the sort of people the police need for their eyes and ears on the street, and they're just throwing that goodwill away. Right, well, this is the answer from a... why isn't this moving? Oh yeah, this guy who started the Public Safety Foundation. Good luck, Mr. Oh crikey, Gogan? Maybe. I'm not sure. I'll say Gogan. I'll bet he has trouble with that when he's trying to give his name over the phone for anything. Good luck, because we need some work on this situation. All right. And mind how you go. Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm, or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com, and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.